Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out to me. My name is Sashi Whitman, and some of you, I think, know my daughter Kiyomi. She's a junior at Scripps Ranch High as well. So I'm just excited to be here. I'm going to be talking about a variety of things to do with it'll be based obviously on my experience with business, what I've done. And like I was telling Kylie before, I just appreciate everyone being here. I know it's been a long week for all of you and you guys are just done and you guys would rather, I don't know, be sleeping or something. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here. So what I wanted to start with was a little bit of my background in business, and then I'll just kind of go from there. And I'm also able to take questions if that's okay during my presentation. I'm totally fine with anyone interrupting me. So I'm perfectly comfortable with that. So I have to say, I had no idea back in high school that I would be at the specific place that I'm at now. I had no interest, even the thought of business didn't even come into my head when I was a junior or senior. I imagine most of you are juniors or seniors. So I was actually focused in sciences, and I was really excited about going to major in the field of microbiology. That was my original degree when I applied to UC San Diego, and I wanted to go into genetics. And my parents were very, very happy about that. As you probably can tell, I'm Indian. And so my parents, my dad's a doctor, and everybody was, my family was very, very excited. So when I went to UCSD, I was in a chemistry class for about, I think, I want to say 4 to 5 weeks. And I said, no, I'm not doing this. I hate chemistry. I hate it. So I thought, okay, that's it. I'm done. And I think I was undeclared for a little while, and then I started to take some sociology classes, and I really, really enjoyed it. What was I going to do with sociology? I don't know, but I liked it. And so I took some classes, and it was very, very difficult to, it was very competitive even at that time when I got into UCSD. And so I was with a lot of other smart students who were really, really strong writers. So then the school I went to at UC San Diego, it's called Warren College, and they have you take 2 minors. And one of my minors was psychology. And I thought, well, I might as well double major because it's 6 more classes. It's no big deal. So I ended up double majoring in sociology and psychology, still not knowing what I was going to do with my life. And I finished my degree, I think, in 4 years and 2 quarters, which was a lot longer than I had planned. When I graduated, I told myself I am never going to grad school. I was done. I had spent 23 years of my life in school, and I was over it. So I was wondering what the next step was. So I was really interested at that time, which is really crazy considering where I'm at now. I was really interested in nonprofits. I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve people. I did not want to be a social worker. I knew that. So I ended up working at a community heights development corporation here in San Diego called City Heights. And I was there for, I want to say, about a year. And I got offered a position to work with AmeriCorps. I don't know if any of you know what AmeriCorps is, but it is a organization that was started during the President Clinton's administration when he served. And they took volunteers into the nonprofit organizations and had them serve. It was like an internship, and it was a big honor that I applied for it, and I was given this opportunity. Well, things changed, and I ended up moving to Saudi Arabia. Why did that happen? Well, it happened because my husband now, who was my boyfriend at the time, got offered a job there to take care of, believe it or not, these like black tip reef sharks for a sheikh, for a very, very wealthy man in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. So in order for him to go over there, he had to be married. They didn't want some single dude wandering around Saudi Arabia. So I got married right out of college at the age of 23. And I moved across the world. My parents weren't happy. City Heights CDC wasn't happy because I left. And I lived in Jeddah for about 3 years. And just to let you know a little bit about Saudi Arabia, for those of you who may not know, it even then was a very limited society. The only jobs you could get as a female were to be a nurse, to be a teacher, or to work as an airline flight attendant. Those were the three options. I didn't want to do any of those. So my husband's boss happened to be an American entrepreneur, thank God. And he was like, why don't you come work for me part-time? And I was like, okay, good. Because I was like 24 and I'm like, I want to work. I'm bored. I don't know what I'm doing here. And so, and you can't, and as a woman, by the way, you can't drive in Saudi Arabia either. So I was very, I was like either at home hanging out with some friends that I've met from other countries, or I was helping this American entrepreneur. So that is how I ended up in business. And so what I did, I'll tell you in the next slide. So I ended up working in Saudi Arabia and also the United Arab Emirates. I did some work there for about 2 years. And then I finally thought, what if I went back to the United States and got my MBA? Now I feel ready, because I had had a 3-year break. I had the opportunity to travel. We did a safari in Kenya. I went back to India after many years to my cousin's wedding. And I'm like, I am now ready to go to grad school. And so I started studying for the GMAT, getting ready for that. And I went back to San Diego, and I was ready to go pretty much. I was hoping to stay in Southern California. I applied to UCLA, Anderson School of Business, and they were like, you need to take the GMAT again because you didn't do so well. And I'm like, no, I'm not taking that again. So I hated that test. So I'm like, no, thanks. I'll go to San Diego State. That's just fine. So I went to SDSU and I got my MBA. I went full time and got my MBA in 2 years. I didn't work at all during that time, but I was really glad that I had the experience before. So the experience before I got to, or while I was working in Saudi Arabia, like I said, I was working for an American entrepreneur. If you were wondering what he was doing, he was importing American-made products into the Middle East, which was a big deal at the time, because imagine at that time, there was no e-commerce. I know it's extremely, extremely long time ago. And we sold things like, Hobie cats and Maujim sunglasses and tea tree oil, anything to do with like tropical, being outside, and luxury items that had like the fun factor. And all these items were very, very expensive at the time. So I started helping out a little bit with sales, and that's how I ended up at a trade show in the United Arab Emirates, doing some sales on behalf of this entrepreneur. I wrote a business plan, and I'm like, okay, this is something that I can see myself doing. This is interesting to me. And I had still no idea how I would ever apply sociology and psychology to it, but it really didn't matter. So when I like I said, I went to San Diego State, and at the time, I have to say, I just did the degree because I knew I needed an MBA. It was not prestigious. It wasn't, the Anderson School at UCLA. It wasn't Wharton. It wasn't Harvard, but it was fairly inexpensive at the time, and I knew I could just get a degree and get it done. So now SDSU is rated really, the School of Entrepreneurship started at the time, and now it's rated in the top 20 in the US. And it's really got a really pretty strong MBA program. So I don't know if any of you know the cost of, are all of you, by the way, interested in getting an MBA? Can I just see you, for those of you, show of hands? Okay. If you are, it's quite a expensive endeavor. So the cost of an MBA at San Diego State is roughly $28 a year. At a private school like Stanford and Harvard, you're looking at $60 a year. So after spending $120,000 on your education, you would hope that you would land that magical job somewhere. The other really key thing with business school, which they look for always, is a minimum of at least 2 years of experience working in business. So that's something that I would highly recommend, is that that you don't necessarily leave your undergraduate experience and go directly to B school, that you get some experience behind you. It will really help you in your classes. You can engage with other students. What I loved about the MBA experience at State was that we worked in small groups, in these cohort groups. So we got to know our cohort really, really well. And we were a team. You always work in teams. And I know from the experiences that you probably had, teams are not always the best. But unfortunately, in business, you have to work in teams. Even if you run your own business, there will be a team element to it. So I highly recommend that. And I have to say, it was probably one of the best decisions I made to go to grad school. The other thing just to keep in mind when you get if you decide to get an MBA, after several years, it becomes dated. So if, say, some of you get your MBA the years, I don't know, 2024, 2026, 2028, something like that. If you're looking 10 years down the line, by the time you're probably in your mid to late 30s, the MBA becomes dated because business changes so rapidly. Certain pieces don't, like finance, accounting, economics, those pieces, but marketing, international business changes very, very rapidly. So what's honestly helped me is going back into teaching, and I will talk about that in a little bit. So after I graduated from state, I ended up working. I actually had a really difficult time finding work. It was very discouraging, actually, because I graduated, I think, with a lot. That's the other piece just to remember, is you're graduating with a lot of other people who also got their MBA. So I worked for a very, very small startup in Mission Valley. And then I was there maybe only 3 months. And I ran into a friend of mine who actually still lives here in Scripps Ranch with me. And she said, hey, you should check out this company called Survey Express. It's in Sereno Valley. And they're looking for people. They're another startup. And I said, and startups were exciting, right? They're like, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. And I said, sure. So I interviewed and I got a job, and I was working in their sales department, and I wore a lot of hats because there was less than 10 people in the company. We were in a very expensive piece of real estate in Sereno Valley, but we didn't have a lot of money. So they were like, okay, you're going to do like 3 jobs and you're going to figure this out. I did everything from sales to customer management. I would call up our clients. What the business did, just to let you know, is they provided surveys to restaurants so that when, as a customer, you order from, say, Domino's Pizza and you fill out a survey, that is what this company gave. So this company gave data back to the businesses on how their business was doing. So I worked in sales and customer management. I was there for, I think, about 4 years. And I could tell that things were starting to not feel right. Some people had left, they were hiring some other individuals, and I'm like, okay, I should keep my eye out and see what else is out there. So I actually was at Sammy's Pizza one night right here in Scripps, and I ran into another friend from grad school, and she's like, you should come check out Kyocera Wireless. I'm like, oh, okay. So I applied to Kyocera Wireless and I got a job in market research. And that's how I ended up in marketing. And that's probably still my number one love in terms of business in marketing. To me, it's the most creative, it's the most fun, and it's the most interesting and dynamic piece of business because it's always changing, right? 3 years from now, it'll be another social media platform that'll be on top. It'll no longer be, the ones that we currently use now. So it's constantly changing. So market research, though, was very data oriented. So my strength actually was in doing the focus groups and moderating because I worked well with people. I like to work with people. So I was at Kyocera Wireless, and I want to say this, and this is a very competitive market, as you can imagine, telecommunications, super competitive. And Kyocera was not as strong as some of the other, companies at the time. So after about 3 years in market research, they were like, okay, we're laying off a bunch of people. So there's an opening here in product management. Do you want to go into product management? I'm like, yes, I don't want to lose a job. So I went into product management, and I have to say that was one of the hardest things I've ever done because I had to manage the entire accessory line for Kyocera. That's anything to do with like headsets, cellular, battery chargers, anything. And I had to work with sales, I had to work with finance, I had to work with other areas of marketing. I had to answer to a lot of people to tell them when products were going to be ready to be shipped. It was extremely stressful. I did, however, have the opportunity to go overseas to China while I was working there to see where the manufacturing plant where they made a lot of our products were developed. And that was an amazing experience. So that I will never forget, and I am super, super grateful for. What happened at Kyocera was I was actually in India at the time visiting my grandmother and some family, and it was in January, and I started to get emails that something was going on at Kyocera. Things were starting to, like, there was some weird stuff happening. I got an email from my boss, and he's like, I'm trying to work with management. I'm trying to make sure to keep your job. I'm like, okay, what's going on? There had been some layoffs prior to me going to India. This was about 10 years ago. And it was just when the recession at that time, not the current one that we were in, hit. And I ended up finding out when I came back from India. I went to work. It was a Monday morning, and the place was like a ghost town. Like, my entire product management department had been decimated. There were open desks, there were like open drawers, computer cables lying around. I'm like, what is going on? So I go over to human resources, and I'm like, they didn't tell me anything. So, prior to that day that I walked in, and they said, well, we had to lay off several departments, and I want to say it was like 150, 200 people. And you are one of the people that has been asked to stay behind for an extra 3 months to make sure we can hand off the accessories department to our outsourced company. And I'm like, okay. I was like kind of panicking, but then also relieved that I had 3 months to find another job, because I'm like, oh my God, now what am I going to do? So I decided at the time, so we saved a bunch of money. I ended up getting what's called, it's called a severance package. When you work at a company for a certain amount of time, and if they lay you off, you get a package that is based on the number of years that you work there. So I put that into the bank, and at the time, my daughter, who I just mentioned, was about, I think, 5 or 6 years old. And the job market at the time, by the way, was decimated. Everybody was trying. There was a bunch of people just like me, all in marketing, trying to find work. And everybody started to call themselves a marketing consultant. I'm a marketing consultant. I can help you with your website. I'm a marketing consultant. I can help you with your e-commerce site. I'm a marketing consultant. I can help you develop your own business. And so I'm like, I can't do this. I can't compete against all these other marketing consultants. So I decided to go into teaching. And that allowed me flexibility to choose my schedule, to choose what I wanted to teach, where I wanted to teach, and to be home for my daughter. I did not want her in a 6 to 6 program. I know some people don't have that choice. I fortunately had the choice to be able to choose. So I decided to go into teaching. So this is where I was so grateful to have my MBA, because otherwise I wouldn't be allowed to do this. So I have taught pretty much everywhere that you can think of in San Diego. I started at UCSD Extension. I started teaching market research. I've taught a lot of international students from all over the world, China, Japan, Europe. I've taught classes where I took a group of students and we went into a business, and they provided a business plan, a marketing plan for them. I have taught at the University of Phoenix. That was mostly online, and then that school started to die. I've taught at the Art Institute for a couple of years, and then that folded. That is no longer in existence. So thankfully, I'm actually now at, and UCSD Extension has actually gotten very quiet this year due to the pandemic. As you can imagine, there's like no international students are allowed here, and they all want to come. So that program is now very quiet. So I'm now at San Diego Miramar College, and I teach the business course there and the marketing course there. So I teach college students, and I teach actually high school students. So I don't know if any of you are taking a Business 100 course through the community college program, the CCAP program. If you are, I'm one of the instructors, and I teach the students over at UC High School. So I've actually enjoyed that a lot. And I enjoy the student population, and I love teaching juniors and seniors, and I really enjoy also teaching the college students I have in my marketing course are anywhere from the age of like 23 to like in their 50s. They're like all over the map. So this allowed me a lot of flexibility to just really figure out, okay, what are my next steps? What do I want to do? So during this time, I think I was at UCSD Extension in Phoenix. I'm like, I started attending a networking group. Next slide. So I went to these networking groups, which they're still very, very popular, and there's a million of them. Okay. So I went to a few, and one that I found that I loved the most was called Connected Women of Influence. They are a invitation-only business association of female entrepreneurs and CEOs. And I like this group because it was a lot of the other networking groups were focused a lot on MLM. I have no problem with MLMs or what they represent or stand for. When I say MLMs, I mean like Rodan and Fields, or those businesses that are trying to, like, sell, and there's a full sales group. But I just didn't find the same caliber of women that I did in Connected Women of Influence. They were amazing. The reason why I found Connected Women of Influence was I applied to be what's called the Sue Talks. So I know a lot of you have heard of TED Talks, but I encourage you to check out Sue Talks, because Sue Talks is for women primarily in business, sharing advice on life and business. And so I applied and I didn't hear anything. So I'm like, okay. And then 2 weeks before the event, it's a live event, and you have to give a talk that's memorized for 12 minutes in front of an audience. No PowerPoint, no slides, no notes, nothing. And 2 weeks before the event, I got a call from a woman named Michelle, and she said, "You've been selected to be part of this talk. Somebody dropped out, the 8th person, so you are now in her slot. Would you like to step up to opportunity?" And I'm like, how am I going to put together a talk in 2 weeks? I had just spoken to another networking group here, so I just took pieces of that talk, I changed it, and then all I did for 2 weeks solid in May of a few years ago is memorize. That's all I did. I memorized and memorized and memorized, because you're supposed to go up there and stay on the stage and not mess up and give a 12-minute talk. And that's what I did. So after I did my Sue Talk, I joined this group because I was so impressed by the women in this group. And they're from all over Southern California, by the way. It's Orange County, Los Angeles, Riverside, Inland Empire, and San Diego. And after going through it, I just started to think about, what were my next steps? So, by the way, let me focus on this slide that I'm on right now. So, while I was right before I joined Connected Women of Influence, and part of the reason I was chosen for doing a Sue Talk is I decided during my teaching to become an entrepreneur. I was like, okay, I have an idea and I can't get it out of my head. I want to start a digital magazine that provides resources to women in Southern California. And it's going to be everything from business to family to finance to health to work life. I was starting to curate and get all of these authors behind me to publish. I just wanted almost like blog posts. I didn't want them to be super long. My weakness in this business, which I realized looking back, is that I was really poor with sales. I was not good at asking people to invest and give me money. I'm much better at it now, but for different reasons. So this business, I would say, lasted for 2.5 years. It was not profitable. I spent more on the website and on delving into it than anything I got than I received from it. However, I have to say that I'm glad that I did it, because it allowed me an entree into Connected Women of Influence. It allowed me to realize what were my next steps. And so at the time when I folded the business, I thought, oh, I failed. And I just realized this was just a next step to other things that I wanted to do. So what came out of the Sue Talks, and once I shut down the magazine, this has been a work in process for about 2 years, is I was offered the opportunity to be the CEO and co-founder of Sashi Rising. Because my idea was, if you could do Sue Talks with a bunch of business women, why can't you take Sue to school? Why can't you make women successful, unstoppable, empowered, and started at the high school level, right? So this is an opportunity for high schoolers and young college women to build their communication skills, work on their confidence, and really work on connections and networking. So I had this idea, we put the business plan together, we launched it this year, and then of course the pandemic hit, and I'm like, oh my God. And this is like an events-driven business, right? Like I was imagining like a room full of faculty and peers and community members and friends, and then I was told, no, you can't meet in person. And I'm like, okay, how are we gonna do this? It is a nonprofit, it's a 501c3. We received our status within 3 months, which is amazing. And we just decided to do one student at a time for now, until we can meet in person, which I'm hoping after this magical vaccine that we can start meeting at the end of summer, or at least the beginning of fall, right? Fall of next year. So, so what we did was we had 2 high schoolers from Riverside County so far do what's called a Sashi Rising talk. It's 6 minutes, it's memorized, and it's just focused on a particular theme. Like, for example, the last girl, the last high schooler who gave her talk, the theme was the courage to imagine. So she did a 6-minute talk, and we coached her on preparing her talk. The first high school senior that did this talk, it doesn't have to be seniors, it's any age from, I would say, 14 to, beginning ages of college. She actually was able to meet some, so at the time we were able to actually have a few people in a room. It was like less than 15 people, no joke. We had some business women and then our Sashi Riser. And she was actually able to meet one of the business women from Connected Women of Influence who runs her own safari company. And this woman actually invited Julene, the Sashi Riser, to come to Africa with her, hopefully in April of 2022, to talk to her nonprofit that she started in in Tanzania, and talk to her students. So it was a really great moment for Julene and an amazing moment for the owner of the safari operation to connect with the high schooler and see how they could actually bring her from this point to over here. And and Julene wants to go to UC Irvine and be a dermatologist, but why not go to safari? Why not have a safari experience in Africa at the same time? So the other piece that we're offering with Sashi Rising is we're working on scholarships for the women that complete our program. So it's not just speaking, we're also going to be doing interview preparation, mentorship, and we're trying to reach also girls who are from different backgrounds from, they could have gone through human trafficking or foster homes. And so again, difficult time to outreach to people because of this lovely state that we're in, but I'm hoping once time passes, this will continue to expand. So we've raised some money this year, and we are just still continuing to grow and see where it goes. So I'm super excited about this. And what's crazy is that I started out in nonprofit, I went to corporate, then I went into teaching, and then I went into like my own solopreneur, and then I'm like, now I'm back in nonprofit. So it's nothing that I could say that I could have figured out many, many years ago. It just sort of happened organically, and I was open to opportunities. So that is where I am currently at right now. So I still teach at Miramar, but this is my little baby that I'm working on, trying to make successful. So some of the lessons learned that I just wanted to kind of touch upon, because I know that many of you are super focused, very, very goal-oriented, and I know much more goal-oriented than I described myself in high school. But I would like to say that, life is never a straight line. You don't have to know right now what you want to do. It's okay to go to college, your undergrad experience, and major in something that you never thought of. I am so glad I majored in psychology because I actually use that in my marketing. It's used all the time. So I'm really, really thankful that I was a psych major. That has still been very, very helpful. So, and I just keep I tell my daughter, I tell all my students, it's okay not to know exactly what you want to do at this moment in time, because things change. And it depends who you're meeting, who you're hanging out with, what opportunities you have, where you happen to live, what job you're in, something else can unfold. The other piece that I really, really stress about is the communication piece. So unfortunately, I think because you are all doing school remotely, you are not getting the opportunity to do a lot of public speaking. And for my Business 100 students last year, I made them speak almost weekly. They hated me by the end of the semester because I made them speak again and again and again, because the worst thing you want to do is get up in front of a bunch of people and like not know what to say, or feel like when you're asked a question, you have to go, I'm not sure, grab your cell phone. It's like, you have to be able to give your 30-second pitch like that. Like when somebody asks you what you want to do, what your goals are, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I hate those interview questions, like the worst, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? But you have to be able to answer that in some way. So even though it's okay not to know your future, you still need to be able to answer it. So I always just really stress, if you have opportunities, I really hope 6 months from now to really work on your speaking skills and your written skills, especially in business. And honestly, I don't really care. Like if you end up in biochemistry and you're like, yeah, I decided to go into this field, and you still have to speak. You still have to be able to communicate. You still have to be able to explain why you developed this piece in this for this particular product in this particular company. That's never going to disappear. And writing, the writing skills, I have to say, I hammer my students on it because I see a lot of mistakes. I really, really stress making your writing as strong as you can. You guys have so many resources, like use it, right? Especially when you're writing emails, make sure it is like perfect. Whoever was writing the emails, by the way, from Girls in Business, great. It was really professional, succinct, to the point. It was awesome, right? That's how you should be writing. The other piece I wanted to stress is networking. You can't, this is why this group is so great, right? You want to continue to do this, but you want to be able to do networking. Networking is not what I've seen in a lot of networking groups is you'll have a bunch of people in a room and they start passing out business cards. And they're like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I do this. Oh, okay, let's exchange. And it's like all of a sudden you have 15 business cards and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? I would rather have a quality conversation with someone for like 30 minutes and really delve into what they're doing and ask them questions like, what do you need help with? Or how can I serve you? Or who can I connect you with? That's how you build relationships. It's not just about collecting business cards or like building up this huge LinkedIn portfolio. By the way, which I would have to say, if you are all girls in business, I would hope that each of you are starting to work on your LinkedIn profile. That's like a whole other seminar, which I'm sure you can find somebody who's very well versed in LinkedIn to teach you how to do that. But building that LinkedIn profile is very, very key. I've had a couple high schoolers start to do it in their junior, senior year, and it was very, very, you may think, I don't have a lot to say, or I don't have a lot to show, but even what you're doing right now in high school, because you were all involved in so much, you can still start to build something. And it shows credibility, and it shows your social media, that strength, and that you're not afraid to what to show. You can even talk about, I've done presentations in this, I've written papers in these areas. Publish that, like show that you've done that kind of work on your LinkedIn profile. And then finally, really, like every experience matters. I can't think of one experience that I've done in my life. I mean, even when I was in Saudi Arabia, like thinking, what am I doing in this crazy country? You know, what am I doing working at this company that is going nowhere? Every experience led to something. So every experience matters. Who knew that 4 years ago, after doing a Sioux Talk, I'd be starting a nonprofit? I honestly had no idea. And failure can still mean success. Even if you decide not to do something, or you leave a job, or the job gets pulled out from under you without you expecting it, or you try a business and you end up closing it. You're like, that didn't work. That was a terrible idea. Or the partner I chose, you know, flaked or didn't do what he or she was supposed to do. Failure can still mean a success because you've walked through it. You've walked through it and you've learned something from it. So those are the pieces I wanted to leave you with, and I'm open to taking any questions, or if anybody wants to ask anything.
Yeah, I had a question actually going back to what you said about MBAs becoming dated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean like they sort of lose value, or
Yes.
what did you
Yeah, they lose value. Well, they become kind of old, right? Because my MBA is like ancient. It's so old, it's sad, right? Honestly. And so what has helped me is teaching. So by going back into teaching, now I'm like more up to date on social media. You talk to a lot of business people now, they're like, you know, they're like, wait, what can I do with Instagram, or what can I do with this? I mean, they're so, and it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of women who are in my age group who are very uncomfortable. The only thing they're comfortable with is like, say, Facebook, for example, right? But because I have taught those social media courses and I have retaught myself that way, I'm more up to speed than a lot of my peers. Okay, I'm not as well versed as any of you, but I'm definitely a little bit more up to speed. So I would always say to go back and keep learning. So that so some pieces of it become dated, and it's mostly in the areas I would say in international management and marketing. If you decide to get an MBA in finance, okay, finance is not going to change. If you decide to get an MBA in accounting, that you're solid there. But if you get it in all the other different areas, or like there's so many different areas of business that have appeared, it's really important to just keep those skills fresh as possible. So good question.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Anything else?
I wanted to ask, you said like at one point you kind of had a lot of failure. So do you have anything like tips on how to stay motivated and confident even when you are like faced with failure?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think what helped me was being a part of a business networking group. So when I decided to say fold my magazine, I started talking about it. I'm like, I think I'm gonna end this, and I'm really struggling with this. I feel like I failed. I feel like I invested all this. I wasn't supposed to do what I set out to do. My goals. It's been 2 years. I have nothing to show for it. I was like, we're so good at beating ourselves up. I'm really good at beating myself up. Excellent at it. And so some woman in the group was like, no, you tried it and you walked through it, and that is a success. You launched it and you tried it. And so that really helped me to be like, okay, stop beating yourself up, right? And when I was let go from Kyocera, when I didn't do well, I didn't do well in several of my classes at UC San Diego. I had to really let that go and go, okay, what my next step is like to move on. I cannot sit there and sit in that failure. I have to go, okay, now I could be better here. And how can I show up and be better? So I would say a reliance on other people that will help you, like have a strong tribe. That is really, really key. And then don't beat yourself up. Like you can go through a little pity party, but then like move on. Yeah, good question. What else?
I
Oh, sorry. You
okay.
can go.
I actually had a question on like what was the most important lesson that you learned in like any of the programs that you went through, like 23 years of school?
What is the important lesson I learned after going through
Yeah.
school? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, especially like for business or like trying new things or stuff like that.
Okay, good. Okay, I got you. No, good question. First of all, I think from a business perspective, I think one of the greatest lessons I learned is to make sure that if I had to do my magazine all over again, I would have made sure that I wasn't doing it alone, that I had somebody beside me who was awesome at sales, who could go out there and get money. I would have somebody who was key in like operations and finance, really strong at that. I'm great with creative ideas. I can create like all day long. And then I need that other support. I need somebody who's really strong with strategy. I need somebody who's really strong in finance. And so what's great about my nonprofit, thank God, is that I have 3 other really amazing women that I work with who are all well versed in their areas. One is like, she's on the Susan G. Komen board. She leads it for nonprofits. I have another woman who's awesome at strategy. I have another woman who actually, she runs Connected Women of Influence. She's got 700 members. She started that group 12 years ago. So have those people around you that you can really count on. And I would be very cautious too about lots of people I know have gotten into business with friends, and you have to really be careful about that, because I've seen friendships go south, just like word of warning. Things change. People are like, I don't care about this anymore. People take the money and do this over here. So be really clear about expectations up front about who is vested in what, especially from a finance standpoint. Like if you're putting in $10,000, what does that mean? If somebody's putting in $90,000, what does that mean? What does that represent? I would have that be really, really clearly laid out. I've seen so many relationships and people just honestly just get screwed over because they didn't have that written out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
I kind of had a question. You keep saying that it's really important to choose a strong tribe and people. How do you say you have to like lay out your expectations very clearly? Do you use LinkedIn for that? Like, how do you find those people?
Yeah, no, those are really good questions. Yeah. So there's a couple things. So I think a little bit of it is trial and error, to be honest. Like it's about going to several groups and going, these people don't really, I have nothing to say to them. I don't really have a relationship or like a rapport, a natural conversation. I noticed when I went to Connected Women of Influence, it was so easy for me to sit there, not just during a business presentation and luncheon, but I could easily hang out for like another hour and talk to these women and learn something. or just enjoy my time. So that I think is really helpful in terms of from a business side. I also think it's very important, by the way, to have a tribe that's just your friend group that's really supportive and strong no matter what. But from a business perspective, I would say it's very important to find, and I think it's like, I would say in college, that's a great time for you to start exploring if you're interested in going into, and not honestly, no matter what, it could be business, it could be science, it could be any field. Find a group and start seeing if there's safety there, if you can really share about who you are and what your goals are, and then get some feedback from them that really makes sense and where they're trying to come from a place of helping you. And I have to say, even in this Connected Women of Influence group, I was in 3 different groups before I was now in my 4th. And that group has actually been the most helpful. So even that was trial and error. It was just constantly like seeing which group made the most sense and then meeting with them and going, okay, I'm sorry, this is not working out, or let's go ahead and end this group and go somewhere else. So LinkedIn kind of helps too, but LinkedIn I would say is more of a, that's more of like a resume builder, like you, and it's a spotlight for you and your business. So it's like kind of where you kind of, you talk about what you've done so well in your business career, and you spotlight that. That's I would say the biggest purpose of LinkedIn. So, any other questions?
Yeah, so could you give us more experience about how you cooperate with different kinds of people? Yeah, your partners.
Oh, how I cooperate with them?
Yeah.
So, well, so for example, it's a lot, to be honest, it's a lot of talking. So what I do right now is I have a monthly meeting with my board for my nonprofit organization. So it's really important to have meetings, but don't, I would caution you on that, because there's lots of groups that I say over meet, and after a while you're like, oh my God, I'm meeting out, because you're talking, and then you end up talking about the same issues and you're going around in circles. So have an agenda at the meeting, make sure there's a clear timeline, like we're meeting from 9 to 10 a.m. and we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. We're going to talk about some initiatives, we're going to talk about our new products, and we're going to talk about this market that we're going after, whatever that is. So make sure it's really clear and laid out what you're speaking about, and make sure everyone's role is very clear. I have to say, as the CEO and co-founder of a nonprofit, I end up a lot of the responsibilities on my shoulders, right? So then I have to go out and find. So I'm working. What's also really key, to be honest, is I'm working with a nonprofit coach, and and she's working with me on the fundraising initiatives. So again, lean on other people that can help you, that are stronger than you are in a certain area. But make sure that they're the right people. The other thing is I interviewed 3 different organizations to partner with me. So, and then the one individual in my board who I work very closely with on the fundraising piece, she and I talk now once a week. We have a standing meeting, and honestly, it really doesn't move unless somebody's sick or someone's on vacation, or there's, so that's a standing meeting, and we use that solid hour to discuss the fundraising initiatives for what we're doing. So I would make sure that you just have a clear agenda, concrete meetings, and that, again, that you choose the right people to work with. And that, I think, just takes wisdom and some trial and error before, sometimes you'll end up with somebody and you'll be like, oh my gosh, why am I working with this person? I'm sure you've experienced that in teams even that you're on right now. You're like, oh, this person's like weighing us down, or they're not giving what they should. They're like giving 15% and I'm giving like 80%. Like, that's not fair. And that will always happen, I have to say. That's just the way the world is. So it's also being honest about them, about what you expect and your expectations. So, good
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you, for those of you who are taking the community college course in business, are you learning anything from it? Are you gaining anything from it?
I'm taking it, and I think I'm definitely learning stuff, but I didn't know a lot to start off with because I don't really have any like prior knowledge. But I would say that, yeah, I'm learning stuff.
Okay, that's awesome.
We're doing a lot of like researching like different companies and different like industries and stuff like that. So
Okay. Okay. So that's a start. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah. So I definitely encourage you when, you know, later on, if you continue to want to go into business, that you take future courses that will help build on that. So, and that will allow you to work in, you know, teams. So, yeah. Anything else that I can answer?
I'll just ask one final question because I don't know if anyone else has any more. But I see like a common, or maybe not a common, but just like a lot of the time when I talk to women that are in business, they didn't know that they were going to go into business. They didn't major in something that was like, oh, this will take me to business.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think it's like really that important to like major in business to go into business, or like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say honestly, from an undergraduate standpoint, it probably isn't. I would say, you know, for those of you who are definitely, if you're career oriented, you know, like a master's degree now is so key. So I would say from a business perspective, an MBA is, even though it will become dated like a decade later, takes time, it is still really important to get. From an undergraduate experience, honestly, that's where I'm just like, go ahead and major in like art if that's your passion, or go ahead and major in, you know, a science degree, or maybe you major in something for 3 months and you're like, this is not what I want to do, and you change it. It's okay. Or have a major and a minor. I don't think the undergraduate is as strong as it, as what was the word I'm trying to use? It doesn't give you as much currency as it used to. It's not as valuable because so many people have an undergraduate. I think it's great. I think it's great that more people have it, but the graduate degree is the key, because that just gives you more open doors. I was told a few times just in the last several years that, oh, okay, it's good that you have an MBA. Now you're able to, oh, okay, you have an MBA. Oh, where'd you get? Like, it keeps coming up in conversation. So that's what I would say. So I would say it's totally fine if to major. If I was hiring somebody, especially if I was hiring somebody, I would expect them to have some business experience. But if their major was like in some other discipline, or like English, if you're an English major, or literature, or whatever, biology, I'd be like, oh, okay, why did you decide to do this? And now how did you end up working where you are? I think the work experience is a lot stronger than the undergraduate degrees. So that's what I've seen. And most of the friends that I've known have gotten their degrees like much later, their MBAs later on. So, which is also a possibility. Used to be very common that companies would pay for MBAs. I don't think that's as common anymore, because what companies have seen is that, you know, it started actually with the Gen Y millennials. As they leave, they're like, okay, that was really fun. Now I'm going over here. So like the whole point of getting the MBA at that company is to stay, and then they end up taking the information and they like go over to this company here. So it's not as common anymore. Anything else? Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming to talk. And I think this seminar is like the one that the most people have come to this so far. So that's really good. And I think we'll just end off there today. So I want to thank you so much for coming to speak and giving us this opportunity to listen. And before we end, is there anything like final words you would want to say?
I would say actually now, honestly, because it's December 18th, I would say go enjoy your break, like no stress, like go and sleep and just enjoy yourselves. And I know you guys are like in a really, listen, I'm watching what's happening, and I'm working with my students. You guys are in a really, really tough situation having to do remote school. So give yourself a break, and just give yourself more credit than you think, because what you're doing is pretty phenomenal. So that's what I would leave you with.
Okay. Thank you so much. And
Thank
thanks.
you. Okay. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody. Okay.